Look at the snow out there. City staff out clearing roads as another week goes by and another massive storm hits the GTA. It began in the morning and has not let up since. Much of the GTA remains under a snowfall warning. Up to 15 centimeters expected to have fallen by the time it's all over. For drivers, it's making for a very messy ride home. Kelda Ewan right now at Dundas and the DVP. And Kelda, I was going to ask you how it's looking out there, but I can see it's not looking good.
No, Dwight, not looking too good. Now, you're right, I'm on Dundas, overlooking DVP. Now, if you look over here towards the DVP, it's not so bad right now. It's not too congested. It's not too slow moving, but we are hearing that north of Don Mills on the DVP, that's where it gets a little congested and a lot more slow moving. But yeah, I see that cars are taking caution and they're driving slower than usual, and that's what the Environment Canada is advising, and the OPP are advising, to just drive to the conditions. Don't be in a rush, be patient. Now, I was at the salt yard just a little bit earlier, and they gave an update not too long ago. They said originally they were expecting about 10 centimeters of snow. That's now been adjusted. We're expecting between 10 to 15 centimeters of snow. So they're also adjusting the way they tackle this. As the salters, they have been out since 7 a.m. This is earlier than the previous snowstorms. They've been out since 7 on all the main roads, arterial roads, expressways, making sure to get salt on those roads. Then around 1 o'clock, they were deploying plows to get rid of some of the buildup on some of the expressways. And then at 4 o'clock, more plows were deployed to tackle the sidewalks, the bike lanes, and some of the other main roads. So it's all hands on deck. Many crews are out tackling this. 1,500 workers on 12-hour shifts, making sure that the roads are clear. Now, the city is also aware of complaints from previous snowstorms that crews weren't working fast enough to clear some of the smaller streets and the sidewalks and the bike lanes. They are asking people to be patient, and they say that snowplow operators are doing their best and that they simply need to be patient.
Storm again didn't happen at the greatest of times. We're now at 4:30 p.m. in starting of the PM rush, and our plows are in the congestion as the cars, as everybody else is. So it will extend our times to complete the plowing. But again, please have extreme patience, give our equipment the time and space necessary, and we'll get these roads in good shape.
We're out here trying to help everybody out, trying to get to where they need to go.
People in the way sometimes?
Oh, a lot of times, but what are you gonna do? We gotta try to, be patient and go with the flow. What
if cars are in parked in spots where you can't get through? What happens?
We usually try to get a hand crew out there, try to take care of that.
Now, as with the last few snowstorms, the city is sending out 1,100 pieces of equipment. That's 600 snow plows, 300 sidewalk plows, as well as 200 salt trucks. Now, I was also out and about earlier talking to people. I'll have more on how Torontonians are dealing with yet another blast of winter. That's a little bit later. Dwight.
Thank you, Kelda. Now, we set up a camera inside our building today looking at the corner of Wellington, and John watches the roads get a little more snow covered as the day goes along. Thankfully, we did not capture any collisions at this intersection. Nick Sirkovich is with us tonight. Nick, it seems like Colette is smarter than us and always books these snow days off.
Doesn't it always seem that way, Dwight? Every time I'm here, it snows. But although that's sort of been the story this winter, we've had on and off snowstorms. A couple things that have been working against us here with regard to accumulations. Temperatures have been on the cold side. We're about -10 degrees, and that actually makes for fluffier snow, so the accumulations are higher than you would get if, say, the temperatures were close to zero. We've also had an easterly breeze coming off of the water, and that's helped to enhance the snowfall as well. Luckily, we are on the tail end of it. Now, there's a look at the current radar picture across the GTA. You see it start to sort of thin out right now. The bulk of the system out over Lake Erie and south and eastward, although we had this for the better part of the day through today. Snowfall warnings for the city of Toronto have now been dropped, but areas down around Oakville, and you go further across the Golden Horseshoe down toward the Niagara region, still under the snowfall warning right now. And we are looking at about 15 to 20 centimeters of snow by the time time all is said and done. And interestingly with this, a lot of times we're used to seeing the heaviest snowfall accumulations further north. In this case, most of the heavy stuff has fallen right around the Golden Horseshoe, and a lot of that just because of the location of the system, but also because of the easterly breeze coming off of the water. The bulk of the system pushing off. Right now we've seen at Pearson 15 centimeters of snow reported. Probably when they make the final reports, though, it'll be a little bit more than that, closer to about 20 centimeters. And it is still falling right now, but generally we're looking at snowfall totals of about 15, even 20 centimeters of snow across the GTA. Give it another couple hours, the snow will taper off, then a few flurries through this evening. By the time we hit tonight, we're just looking at cloud cover, but temperatures down to minus 14 degrees, feeling like minus 18 tomorrow. We get the sunshine. So if you're out with the shovel, at least that'll be a good news there. Minus 5 degrees, light winds, but there's a little bit more in the way of snow to talk about coming up for the weekend. Dwight, I'll have more on that coming up.
You said more snow?
I said more snow.
Thanks,
I ended
Nick.
on a bad note. You're supposed to end on a good note,
Thank
right?
you.
Anyway, yeah.
Next hit, buddy. Thank you, sir.
I experienced a consistent and sustained effort by many people within the government to seek to politically interfere in the exercise of prosecutorial discretion in my role as the Attorney General of Canada.
After weeks of allegations, finger pointing, and few words, Jody Wilson-Raybould broke her silence today. She testified before the Commons Justice Committee about the SNC-Lavalin affair and what the Prime Minister's office said. Hannah Thibodeau has been following this. She joins us live now. And Hannah, did she get to speak her truth?
Oh boy, did she ever, and she's still speaking her truth as we speak. In fact, her opening statement to White was 37 minutes and 54 seconds. How long is that? Typically, witnesses only get 10 minutes. So in that, what she was saying, the former Attorney General and Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould was saying that the Prime Minister, so Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and others repeatedly said to her, here are the consequences if the SNC-Lavalin gets a conviction. So there would be job losses. They would move out of Quebec. She said that was all fine. However, she says they crossed the line, these people, when they repeatedly talked about the political consequences. She said there were repeated phone calls asking her to push the public prosecutor for a deferred prosecution agreement, which means essentially a plea deal for SNC-Lavalin, where they pay a fine and they agree to different types of remedial effects. Now, she says that the attempts to talk her into this remediation agreement were partisan, they were relentless. She said she went through texts, emails, all kinds of different notes she had taken, and she says, like I said, it was fine if they wanted to talk about potential job losses. However, crossed the line when they talked about things saying, look, there's an election in Quebec going on. Not only that, if the Liberals want to get re-elected in October of 2019, then we can't have SNC-Lavalin leaving the province of Quebec. And then she says that she was talking to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister brought up, there's a Quebec election, and not only that, I'm an MP from Quebec. So here's how she responded to that.
At that point, the Prime Minister jumped in, stressing that there is an election in Quebec and that, quote, I am an MP in Quebec, the member for Papineau, end quote. I asked, quote, are you politically interfering with my role, my decision as the Attorney General? I would strongly advise against it, end quote. The Prime Minister said, no, 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 we just need to find a solution.
So she clearly believes that there was inappropriate pressure put on her during this time.
So, Hannah, does she believe she was then demoted because of the SNC affair?
Yes, absolutely. At one point of her testimony, she says she was speaking with the clerk of the Privy Council, and the clerk says that he was worried that there was a collision going to happen between her and the Prime Minister because of the Prime Minister felt pretty firm about this. And she said she didn't hear from anybody until January 7th, when she received a call from the Prime Minister informing her that she was being shuffled out of her role as Minister of Justice and Attorney General and into the Veterans Affairs file. She goes on to say, I believe the reason was because of the SNC matter. So like I said, she's still testifying right now, still being asked very poignant questions, and we are expecting to hear from the Prime Minister after all of this testimony is over.
We're going to let you get back to that testimony now.
Thank
you
you
so much, Hannah. As that hearing was getting underway in Ottawa, another was entering overtime in the U.S. Capitol. And the man at the center of it all let fly with a barrage of damning allegations against the U.S. president. Here's a taste of what Michael Cohen had to say to Congress today about his former boss, Donald Trump.
He is a racist, he is a con man, and he is a cheat. Mr. Trump knew of and directed the Trump-Moscow negotiations throughout the campaign and lied about it. He asked me to pay off an adult film star with whom he had an affair and to lie about it to his wife. He told me that black people would never vote for him because they were too stupid. He showed me what he claimed was a $10 million IRS tax refund. And he said that he could not believe how stupid the government was for giving someone like him that much money back. He never expected to win the primary. He never expected to win the general election. The campaign for him was always a marketing opportunity. I have lied, but I am not a liar. And I have done bad things, but I am not a bad man. I have fixed things, but I am no longer your fixer, Mr. Trump.
In what was a remarkable day in American politics, Cohen spent hours testifying before Congress. In fact, it just wrapped up a short time ago. Lindsay Duncombe has been watching it all unfold from Washington. She joins us now. Lindsay, Michael Cohen didn't just allege the president committed crimes in the past. He also alluded to other possible crimes that may still be under investigation.
Yes, what Michael Cohen said was that there were things that he was unable to say in the course of this hearing because the Southern District of New York was dealing with those matters specifically. And that came up in a question about the final conversation, or the last conversation that Trump and Cohen had together. Cohen said he couldn't talk about that. It's being investigated. So still very much in the realm of what this could mean legally for the president. And if you look at some of the allegations that Cohen made today, including that the president, when he was a candidate, was aware of the WikiLeaks publishing of emails, that the president cut a personal check while he was in office to pay off or reimburse Michael Cohen for paying off the adult film actress. If those things are corroborated by prosecutors, whether it be in the Southern District of New York or by the special counsel, then there are potential legal consequences for the president. And the other thing to watch for in all of this is, what do Democrats do next? Now that they have this information from Michael Cohen, will they call additional witnesses? Will they try to corroborate it in terms of building the political scenarios in terms of where their investigations might lead?
As you talk about corroboration, the last time Michael Cohen was before Congress, he lied. Is there any sense of whether his testimony today is being seen as credible?
Well, that really depends on what end of the partisan spectrum you viewed this. Certainly, there were a lot of Democrats who came out and they thought that he looked like he was a man who had really had a moment where he decided to turn his life around and tell the truth. On the flip side, that was not the case for Republicans in the hearing. Their questioning was pointed. Many of them view this as a spectacle designed by Democrats to take down the president in an impeachment process. And the questioning was very much along those lines in terms of bringing up the crimes that Michael Cohen has committed and taking down his credibility. Here's what some of that sounded like.
He just debated a member of Congress saying, I really didn't do anything wrong with the false bank things that I'm guilty of and going to prison for.
You're a pathological liar. You don't know truth from falsehood.
Sir,
It's
I'm
over
sorry.
now.
Are you
this is
referring
my
to me or
time.
the president?
Hey, this is my time.
Are you referring to me, sir, or the
When
president?
I ask you a question,
Yes.
I'll ask for an answer.
Sure.
How long did you work in the White House?
I never worked in the White House.
And that's the point, isn't it, Mr. Cohen?
No, sir.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not, sir.
You wanted to work in the White House.
No, sir.
You didn't get brought to the dance.
And that's interesting because a lot of people did say that Michael Cohen did want to work in the White House. It was also filed in court documents, so people pointing to that as a discrepancy and a way for Republicans to view him as being untruthful in this process today.
Lindsay, we know the president is in Vietnam tonight. Has there been any reaction from him yet, possibly on Twitter?
Well, let me check my iWatch, but I don't think so at this stage yet. The president tweeted this morning that the only reason Michael Cohen was doing this was because he wanted to get a shorter prison sentence. The message from the White House and the president's supporters has been consistent. They view Michael Cohen as a liar. They view this as a Democratic distraction designed to take away from what's happening in Hanoi right now, which is a meeting between Donald Trump and the North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thanks.
And as we mentioned, Donald Trump is in Vietnam meeting with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. The second set get-together for the leaders will bring you more from Hanoi at 6:30.
It's not Air Canada's fault, it's the India and Pakistan.
After Pakistan shot down 2 Indian planes, an Air Canada flight to India is forced to return to Toronto. What passengers of that flight have to say about the escalating tensions between the two nations coming up. Anti-vaccination ads that have been popping up on electronic billboards around the city are coming down tonight. Officials saying the message they carry is disturbing and potentially dangerous. And as Natalie Nanowski reports, there are questions about why the ads were put up in the first place.
By noon, the digital ads had been taken out of rotation, and most people we stopped weren't happy they were up in the first place.
I mean, we've come so far in medicine, and there's a big giant step backwards.
I guess to each their own, but I mean, vaccines save lives.
Community centers, libraries.
And that's the position of Toronto Public Health. It spends time and money creating pamphlets explaining the benefits of shots for rubella or mumps.
Vaccines have scientifically proven to be effective and they're safe. They've been the reason why so many children have lived on to adulthood.
The group behind the anti-vaccine campaign is Vaccine Choice Canada. It posted about 50 digital ads all over the city. Officials worry they could make parents panic for no reason, especially when the anti-vaccine movement has caused a current outbreak of measles in BC. Canada technically eliminated the disease in '98.
If you actually got some of these diseases like measles, the complications of them can be quite serious. Some of those include brain swelling, swelling along the lining of the brain.
So why were these ads allowed up in the first place? We know Vaccine Choice Canada used a media company to put them up. That company has since taken them down. There's no law in place that would force them to do that, but still the company won't explain why it did. Although the province promotes vaccinations, today it wouldn't go so far as to say it would make them mandatory.
People will make their own decisions for their own children, but I think it's really important that people have the facts. There's a lot of misinformation out there about vaccines right now.
The World Health Organization says this reluctance to vaccinate is a top health threat of 2019. Both the province and the city say if you have concerns, take your questions to your doctor, not Google. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Toronto.
You may have seen our story from last night on the Just for Laughs takeover of a comedy channel on Sirius XM Canada. During a live hit at a comedy bar last night, our reporter Chris Glover was accosted by a bystander. Video of that incident has gone viral, with many people condemning it as assault. Farmer Morelli has more on what happened and the fallout.
And you can see just by the fact that there's standing room only at this event, this town.
A live television hit is part of what reporter Chris Glover does routinely. But last night's segment inside the comedy bar was anything but routine.
Some person came up behind me, and first thing I noticed was the smell of his breath. And there was a lot of alcohol on his breath.
As Glover was live on the 6 o'clock news, this man in the green shirt circled him and moved in closer.
I could feel something on the back of my neck and on the back of my head. And at that minute, I kind of looked behind me. You see in the video, you look behind me, and I didn't really know what it was or what had happened. Looking back, I know that it was his tongue and he was licking me. And then he kind of moved around and started to nibble, lick, kiss my ear and my neck.
It's not the first time a reporter has been accosted on live television.
People having a great time here. In fact,
it's far from it.
The ACL
From yelling profane messages to physical touching, reporters have been subject to various forms of harassment.
I feel as a journalist, when you're in front of a camera, in front of a live camera, you're in a vulnerable position. I think that it's easy to sit back and think, I would have. But until you're in that moment, I don't think you're really able to know what you would do, because you're just in the moment trying to react in this vulnerable state.
Last night's incident has now gone viral after a clip was posted on Twitter. It's now been viewed more than 300,000 times. The man in the green shirt has been identified as Boyd Banks, a local actor and stand-up comedian. Glover was at the comedy club working on a story about the concerns many Canadian comedians have had about the takeover of a satellite radio station. One by one, comedians weighed in on Twitter to slam the incident, some calling it outright assault.
And then when I turned it on and saw that, I started bawling, you know? I felt so bad. I felt like the actions of one individual is not what we all represent.
Michelle Shaughnessy says the stand-up community is unilaterally condemning what happened.
Not only did he take away from our message that we've spent the past week putting our heart and soul into, but he harassed somebody, and that's not okay.
Farah joins us now, and Farah, you managed to reach Boyd Banks by phone. What did he have to say?
Well, that's right. Just about an hour ago, Dwight, I did manage to reach him over the phone. Right off the bat, he was very apologetic, saying there's no excuse for what he did last night. Here's an excerpt of the conversation we just had.
I apologize for my behavior. Your reporter is a fantastic reporter, and I let down the comedy community in Toronto. I let down so many friends, and I let down a lot of people, and it's all my fault. It's absolutely my fault, and I deserve whatever's happening to me.
Now, in terms of what's happening next, Chris did tell us that he has filed a police complaint, so it's now in their hands as to whether they proceed with an investigation. Dwight.
Thank you for that, Farah.
You're welcome.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
There's been a dramatic escalation of tensions between India and Pakistan over the disputed region of Kashmir. Pakistan's military says it has shot down 2 Indian warplanes, and it comes after days of rising hostilities. Thomas Daigle now with the latest.
Pakistan today set a red line, shooting down what it described as 2 Indian warplanes. Pakistan also captured at least 1 Indian pilot who had apparently flown into Pakistani airspace. Now keep in mind, this comes in the context of Indian forces carrying out airstrikes on the Pakistani side of the border for the first time in nearly 5 decades. These are 2 neighbors who have a deep history of conflict, specifically in that disputed region of Kashmir. Now, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan addressed his nation today, saying his Indian counterpart Narendra Modi should sit down for talks and find a way out of this crisis. Khan said better sense can prevail here, but the fear is today's dramatic escalation could lead to further violence between the 2 regional violents who are both nuclear armed and who have repeatedly gone to war over that region. Today's strike signaled Pakistan's response to India yesterday, launching airstrikes against a Pakistani militant group on the Pakistani-controlled side of Kashmir. Keep in mind, this is a disputed region. India controls part of it, Pakistan controls another part. And just 2 weeks ago, a Pakistan-based militant group carried out a car bomb attack, which killed about 40 Indian paramilitary forces in Kashmir. The question now is, how far will all of this go? The U.S. and China are calling on the rivals to de-escalate tensions. And in the House of Commons here today, the British Prime Minister Theresa May said her government is deeply concerned over the situation there. Again, these 2 countries have gone to war over Kashmir before, and it is once again at the heart of a deepening conflict. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, London.
Once Pakistan closed its airspace, an Air Canada flight was forced to turn back to Pearson. It was headed to New Delhi and was already flying over Europe when it made a U-turn. Jacqueline Hansen spoke to the passengers after their return.
A flight to New Delhi left this airport at 9:30 last night, but after more than 14 hours in the air, passengers were back where they started.
I'm exhausted completely, whole messed up.
I'm really tired now.
The flight was about halfway to India when it was forced to turn around. Its flight path over Pakistan was essentially blocked because the country closed its airspace over those escalating tensions with India.
Canadians should know that Air Canada was advised not to fly over certain airspaces and therefore cancelled its flight to New Delhi. Until further notice, I would encourage people to check with the Air Canada website if they've got plans to go to India, as well as travel advisories.
The Prime Minister says Canada is working with other nations around the world on a peaceful resolution to the situation.
This is a conflict that has potential ramifications for billions of people in the region, and that's why we're calling for dialogue, for de-escalation.
Back at Canada's largest airport, many travelers are now unsure when or if they'll get on a new flight. But Air Canada says it has put in place a flexible rebooking policy.
I was grateful that they were considering the safety of everybody before anything else. Like, flight could be tomorrow or the day after, but to be safe is more important than anything else.
Air Canada says its flight from Toronto to Mumbai tonight will operate as usual because it takes a different route that avoids Pakistan. But its flights from Vancouver and Toronto to New Delhi tonight have been canceled. The airline says it will only restart service as soon as it's safe to do so. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, all this snow isn't just causing headaches for commuters, but also a lot of pedestrians and those who live on small side streets like the one I'm standing on right now. Coming up, I'll tell you what they're particularly frustrated with.
All right, let's get back to Kelda Ewan, who is on snowstorm duty tonight. And Kelda, you've moved from the DVP, which is being cleared, to a residential street that is not. So the issue seems to be, though, a battle about where all of this snow goes.
That's right, Dwight. I was out earlier talking to a lot of homeowners. I'm on a residential street right now, a small side street. As you can see, when I'm out of the way, the sidewalk is completely clear, but all this snow has been dumped over here to the side of the road, and it is quite deep. So that means that a car can no longer park here, and that's a lot of the complaints. Much of the complaints from residents that I've been hearing is that, you know, they no longer have a spot to park their car because a lot of their neighbors, they do shovel their sidewalks, but they're dumping the snow onto the side of the road, making a large snowbank. And that's one of the main complaints. Now, the city did address this. They said that, you know, instead of doing that, make sure you are dumping the snow and shoveling the sidewalk and dumping it to maybe the side of your house, to right over here instead. So that's one of the complaints I've been hearing. I was on a residential street earlier today, this afternoon, and there were several people trying to dig out their cars because all the snow from the sidewalk had been dumped on the side of the road. And they say that they complained that, yeah, you know, some of our neighbors, they aren't shoveling the right way. And also I was talking to a woman who was out with her baby in a stroller, and she had another complaint, and she was saying that a lot of times she has to go on the bike lane instead of the sidewalk because it seems to her, in her experience, that the bike lane seems to take precedence over sidewalk clearing.
Residents are in charge of shoveling the sidewalks and everything.
Yes, they are, but some do, some don't, and the ones that do put it all here for us not to have a good parking space.
So that's a problem, right?
All the snow into to the parking space, as we're limited as it is. But there are neighbors who shovel everything into the parking areas and makes it more difficult because we have to drive around to look for parking.
But sometimes I see this path for bikes is really clear, and the path where the pedestrians go is not clear. So if you want to go with a stroller, either is one person walking or one stroller going. So then we invade sometimes these paths, for example.
Invade the bike path?
Yes, the bike paths.
The city said that bike paths as well as pedestrian walkways and sidewalks, they should be cleared at the same time, and they are working to make sure that both are cleared at the same time so there isn't that problem. In the meantime, they also say they're working to make sure that that people know, that homeowners know not to shovel the snow onto the side of the roads. Now, of course, not everyone is complaining. I spoke to many people earlier today who are taking all this snow with stride.
How are you dealing with the weather?
It's no problem. From New Brunswick, so I'm okay.
There's no such thing as bad weather, only inappropriate clothing. I wish it was warmer, but you gotta take what you get. Really, can't be mad about it, can't be negative about it. Just go with the flow.
Snow is supposed to taper off around 9 o'clock tonight. Of course, the work doesn't end. Crews will be out overnight making sure everything is cleared. The city did say that they hope to get everything cleared by Friday. Meanwhile, of course, on streets like this, residents will have to get their shovels out. Dwight.
Yeah, a lot of us will be doing some shoveling tonight. Thank you, Kelda. Nick, that was the line of the day. No such thing as bad weather, just inappropriate clothing. Love that.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. Now, you know, Environment Canada just released some of these unofficial storm totals, and where Kelda is pretty much where the highest total was reported. In Toronto, Riverdale, we're looking at about 23 centimeters of snow that fell with the storm system. Again, unofficial numbers, but there's a look at some of the total storm totals that we've seen. These numbers just being released by Environment Canada. So, get your shovels out. Now, 18 centimeters at Pearson, the record 12.4. That was set back in 2013. So we did break a record with the snowfall today. Temperature-wise, pretty much around the seasonal market, a little bit below seasonal with that. With regard to the snowfall, generally tapering off. Still a few light flurries like you saw out there, but for the most part, we're done with the snow at this point. The storm system has passed. We've still got warnings for snowfall down around the Hamilton-Niagara region, but I expect those to be dropped pretty quickly at this point. And with that, we're just looking at some cloud cover for tonight, but also some fairly cold temperatures as well heading into the overnight period tonight, and that comes with some clearing skies for tomorrow. Minus 11 degrees right now with the wind chill, feels like about minus 20 as we move through the next 24 hours. Winds kind of tapering off for tomorrow morning and generally staying light through the next couple of days. With regard to the snowfall, as I mentioned, it's gone. Some cloud cover for tonight. Tomorrow morning's commute is going to be a sunny one. Generally sunny conditions for tomorrow all the way into Friday, but then we've got a couple more systems that are rolling through that'll bring a little bit of snowfall through the weekend. There's a look at the temperatures for tonight. Minus 14 degrees is what we're forecasting for tonight. Wind chill of minus 18. Tomorrow, highs of about minus 5. That is below seasonal. It does come with the sunshine, though. Friday up to 0 degrees, and then Friday night into Saturday, potential for about 2 to 5 centimeters of snowfall ending around noon on Saturday. And then Sunday, another little round comes through, about 2 to 4 centimeters of snow possible. So not a big storm system, but nonetheless, keep your shovels handy for the next couple of days anyway. Dwight.
Thank you, Nick.
You bet.
Rape crisis centers in Ontario say they are not satisfied with the amount of funding the province is giving them. This as they're seeing more people than ever use their services in the wake of more attention around sexual assault. Lisa Shing has more.
More than 10,000 people call the Toronto Rape Crisis Center's hotline each year. Hundreds come in for counseling, and those numbers are growing exponentially.
Our crisis line calls have gone through the roof. Our wait time for face-to-face counseling is 15 months, so we're at our wits' end. To do that to someone is isolating them further, and they're being left with their own healing journey, which is even more difficult.
The centre says it was depending on new funding announced by the Liberals last March, a 33% increase for 42 centres. That's about $4 million this year. When the Progressive Conservatives came into power, that increase was put on hold. Now the centres have learned this year they'll be getting $1 million. What does this mean for the people you're hoping to serve?
We can't hire another full-time staff, which is what we were hoping to do.
The province is also launching a review of services. The Attorney General didn't say much when questioned by reporters today.
We're going to be getting people together to determine the framework for the review, and when we get that, we'll be able to announce the timeline.
But the Liberals point out there's already been extensive consultation on sex assault services under them.
If you don't invest and if you don't respond appropriately to a woman who is in crisis, I think it's not a good investment because she needs the help, and later on it will cost more money. Absenteeism, depression.
The PCs maintain that Liberal funding was announced to boost support just before the election. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
The federal Liberals say they will soon bring in legislation to give pardons for anyone convicted of pot possession before the drug's legalization last year. Public Safety Minister Ralph Goodale tweeted the bill will provide, quote, no-cost expedited pardons for simple possession of cannabis. While a pardon doesn't erase a person's record completely, it can make it easier for them to get a job or travel. There are approximately 500,000 Canadians with convictions for simple possession. The bill is expected to be introduced before the end of this week. Employees of a Ford dealership near Sudbury are being credited tonight with helping stop an international drug smuggling ring.
So when the Ford employees found tires in the Ford Fusion cars, they noticed right away that the tires weren't actually made for a Ford Fusion. The bolt pattern doesn't actually fit. So in looking at them, they saw that as an anomaly. They were able to take the tires out, realize they were significantly heavier than they should be.
That's because the tires were loaded with packets of methamphetamine, and it wasn't just the Sudbury area. The cars with drugs inside went to a number of dealerships around Ontario. They had been shipped from a Ford plant in Mexico. In all, police seized 180 kilograms of meth with a street value of $4.5 million. U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un struck a positive tone earlier today as their second summit got underway in Vietnam. Both leaders said they're confident progress on Pyongyang's denuclearization will be made, but North Korea is looking for big concessions first. Ellen Morrow has the details.
Two leaders who once fired personal insults and threats of war laughing for the cameras today. And a rare public statement from the North Korean dictator, Kim Jong-un, saying he'd do his best to make sure the summit has an excellent outcome. All smiles, too, as the leaders sat down for dinner before the real work gets underway tomorrow when formal talks begin. The U.S. wants North Korea to give up its nuclear program, promising Kim a better future for his country if he does.
I think that your country has tremendous economic potential, unbelievable, unlimited.
But North Korea wants concessions, including U.S. troops removed from South Korea and an end to crippling international sanctions. Little progress was made following the first summit in June, with North Korea continuing work on its weapons program. And President Trump seemed to temper expectations today on the pace of denuclearization.
Some people would like to see it go quicker. I'm satisfied, you're satisfied.
Trump and Kim are expected to sign a joint agreement tomorrow. President Trump is betting that a warm rapport with Kim could help seal a deal. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Washington.
It is a historic landmark that hosted the likes of Muhammad Ali, but is Sully's boxing gym about to be knocked out of Toronto? After the break, why its owner says they need a new home after 3/4 of a century in business.
They just threw this at me, and I have no time to do anything. I came in here in 1966, and I haven't left.
This weather update is brought to you by Fairmont Le Chateau Frontenac, the best location for your next spring break getaway in Quebec City.
It was a sea of pink at many schools across the GTA today. Pink Shirt Day is an anti-bullying campaign, and one school downtown had a special assembly with the mayor to share personal stories about the impact of bullying at school.
How many of you, when you say came to this school when you first came and it was a new school, or when you went someplace you hadn't been before, felt a little bit lonely or a little bit scared when you went to someplace that was new?
When I was in grade 5 or 6, I was actually a victim of bullying. People were making fun of me, talking behind my back, and of course I heard about it, but it didn't make me feel good.
For the last 7 years of school, I've been bullied. Not only that, but by the same person.
St. Mary's Elementary School marked the day with a special gift from Toronto's professional rugby team, the Wolfpack. They bought a friendship bench for the local community. It represents a physical spot for people to go who may need a friend or just want to talk. From Muhammad Ali to Lennox Lewis, Sully's Gym has hosted boxing royalty. And since its doors opened in 1943, it has become a Toronto institution. But the gym's future is in jeopardy tonight. As Greg Ross tells us, the owners have less than 3 weeks to find a new home.
In the boxing world, Sully's Gym is iconic.
So you walk in, it's like coming in, walking into a temple.
Joe Montega is the owner of Sully's. The gym is still operating despite the fact they have less than 3 weeks to pack up and move out.
This was so sudden. I wasn't expecting that, and they just threw this at me, and I have no time to do anything.
Montega says the owners of the building on DuPont near Lansdowne just told him last month that they would not be renewing his lease. Now he has until March 15th to find a new home.
I'm really scrambling. I'm trying everywhere to find a place, and the rents are unbelievable.
Joe inherited the gym from its original owner, Earl Sully Sullivan, in 1999, but he started training at the gym long before that.
I came in here in 1966, and I haven't left.
That was a big year for the gym. Back then, they were located on Ossington, just north of Queen.
When did you first see these pictures?
Oh, these pictures, it wasn't too long after I started at the gym.
Pictures of heavyweight champion Muhammad Ali, who chose Sully's to train for a fight with Canadian boxing legend George Savallo in 1966.
I remember the day that Muhammad Ali arrived to train at Sully's Gym.
Canadian Boxing Hall of Famer Spider Jones worked and trained at Sully's in the 60s. He says Ali brought the who's who of boxing with him to the gym.
The cars on both sides of the street, you could tell there were a lot of players there, heavy rollers. There were Lincolns, Cadillacs, Tornados, and then out comes Ali, followed by Big Jim Brown, Howard Callison, and the crowd starts chanting, Ali, Ali. It's the most electrifying time that I've ever seen in the city of Toronto, and it happened at Sully's Gym. It's an iconic place because of that.
Through the years, many more greats would come and train at Sully's, including Canadian legends Lennox Lewis and Donovan Razor Ruddock. Ruddock says it's the history that draws them in.
It inspires you so much. You want to be like them.
While it's those big-name boxers that have helped create Sully's legendary status in the boxing world, Montega says its real identity comes from the thousands of kids who have come here over the years because they wanted to learn to box.
They didn't know what to do with their lives. They found a reason, something that they were good at.
And Montega fears it could all be lost unless he can find a space with rent he can afford. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
From PK to Malcolm to Jordan, 3 of the Subban children have made their way into professional hockey, part of a handful of black athletes on ice. Coming up next, we speak to their father, Carl Subban, who is encouraging new Canadians to take up the game of hockey.
Learning about the history, our history in the game, can teach us so many life lessons, especially about having dreams and persevering to fulfill them.
I thought it was really good to see how the people really worked hard, especially the parents who were sometimes in the stands hearing the other parents talking about their children. Really just showed the resilience and how they said, you know, just go out there and score a goal, you know, prove them wrong.
I think that it takes just hard work to be where you are, and I think as being, you know, African, it takes time to get where you are, and I think sometimes you get put back on the back burner, but you really have to show your passion, and I think through all those hockey players, they really showed how truly great they were, no matter their skin color.
There are some kids, those are rather some kids, reacting to the documentary Soul on Ice, Past, Present, and Future, which was shown earlier today at Hot Docs. Over 500 children, many of them new Canadians, watched the film today and got a chance to talk to the father of NHL star PK Subban, Carl Subban. I also got a chance to talk to Carl today about raising 3 professional hockey players and the challenges of getting into the sport. You told me when you first got here from Jamaica, I think you landed in Sudbury, like within weeks you were on skates.
I was on skates, yeah. Winter started early in those days, yeah.
And you're a new Canadian, and you're here today then sharing this with a whole bunch of new Canadians.
Yes.
Why is it important for you to do that?
The power of hockey to unite people. I remember when I came, I wanted to go back to Jamaica, okay? When I looked out the window, I wanted to stay inside. I didn't see too many kids who looked like me. And then when I spoke to them, they were speaking a language I never heard. It was French. But you know what? It's when they invited me to play.
Hockey.
Yeah, and I made friends. And it gave me something to do.
What were you up against when you wanted to get your kids into the game? Because, I mean, you put 3 boys drafted into the NHL. But there must have been challenges in those early days.
Oh, there were many challenges. Obviously, the one that everyone faces, time. You know, energy, money, juggling, you know, family life, work life.
Yes.
And because the hockey life is so demanding.
Yeah.
And we know we have the 3 boys and getting them to their practices and to their games, and luckily so many people, the hockey community is a great community, and so many people volunteered to help us. But you know, the time, the money, those were just some of it. And also a big thing for me was a lack of knowledge, because I remember sitting there with a bag of equipment, you know, and all these equipment were given to me. You know, and I remember sitting there on the couch on a Friday night trying to figure out
what's what. It was like a puzzle. Let's talk about some of the challenges and the racism. There's a story in the media right now about a black hockey player. But your kids face some of this as they played this game, and we hear about it from time to time. It was in the news. How did you prepare them? What did you tell them to help them deal with it? Because you know, inevitably at some point, unfortunately, something's going to happen to them.
Yeah, something's going to happen. And you know, and that's life.
Yes.
You know, you drive a car, guess what? One day you're going to have a flat tire, okay?
Yeah.
Something's going to happen. But you know what? Our mindset usually will shape the mindsets of our children. And I have this mindset that I never wanted the color of my skin to be the reason why I didn't achieve or succeed in life. Maybe there might be a few others out there who wanted it to be, but I wasn't going to give it permission to be. And I believe that's one thing that Maria and I passed on to our children. The second thing is, you know what? There's so many distractions around us. And sometimes how we look, how we sound, people will use those things to distract us. Even the color of our skin to distract us. And I refuse to allow distractions to get in my way. And I remember when Jordan had scored a goal for his NHL team, and they had said Jordan Subban, is a caption that read, Jordan Subban is a dark guy in the picture. You know what? What happens to us sometimes, you know, tells a lot about how we're thinking. And I learned about how Jordan is thinking. He goes, you know what? I spoke with the reporter, he apologized, a mistake. I just want to play hockey. Jordan, you know what I mean? The best way to show who you are, the best way to show your character is to achieve and succeed and to work hard.
Such a pleasure.
Thank you, man.
To you.
Keep up the good work.
Always such a pleasure. We knew it was coming. Didn't make it any easier to deal with. And it seemed to start earlier than predicted, too.
Yeah, by a couple hours. We were looking at around 10 a.m., but it seemed to start more around 8 a.m. or something like that. Thing is, with this, it was slick. I mean, the temperatures being cold around -10, it made the roads extra slippery, and we're still dealing with that tonight. Good news, and I'm going to make this short and sweet. We're expecting all of the snowfall to end within the next hour. So a little flurries right now, but that's about it. -14 degrees tomorrow, -5 degrees. Not much to speak of in terms of wind. However, as I mentioned earlier, into the weekend, we could see a few more centimeters of snow. Not a lot, but, you know, keep your shovels handy.
And then there's more snow to come, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's winter.
We'll talk about snow anymore. That's it for us tonight. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 6. Have a great night, everybody.